this time, I want to introduce Dr. Sue Cleveland. She is the superintendent of Rio Rancho Public Schools and has been the only superintendent of Rio Rancho Public Schools since 1994, as well as I'm a proud Rio Rancho Public Schools alumni and a Cleveland High School alumni, and etc. Today, she brought leaders to be part of her presentation, to basically probably show how a school district works, how a school district functions, and much more. So at this time, I would like to hand it over to Dr. Cleveland.
Hey, thank you so much for this invitation. And I'm going to just share with you very quickly who's here. The moderator today will be Melissa Perez out of our communications office, and she'll be asking the questions and kind of moderating for us. Suzanne Nguyen is there, and Suzanne is our Executive Director of Federal and Bilingual Programs in the district. Julie Arnold is our Principal of the Rio Rancho Cyber Academy. Scott Affentranger, if he's on and maybe coming on, is the Principal of Cleveland High School. Renee Salcedo is the Secondary School Improvement Officer for the district. Mike Chavez is our Executive Director of Human Resources. Janice Chenault is our Elementary School Improvement Officer. Sherry Carver is the Executive Director of all of our student services in the district. I don't know if Andy Pierce is on. I'm looking. And if he gets on, Andy is the principal of the Rio Rancho Middle School. And last but definitely not least is Christine Prescott. And she is the principal of Vista Grande Elementary School. And so they all bring some different perspectives, and I really look forward to just sharing with you some of their thoughts, and then maybe responding to some questions that you might have. So I will turn it over to Melissa to get us rolling.
Thank you, Dr. Cleveland. We do have, as Dr. Cleveland has mentioned, a packed agenda for everyone. So we're going to kind of fly through this a little quickly, but of course, hopefully we'll have some time at the end for some questions. But the first three questions that we're going to have today are going to go to Dr. Cleveland. So the first one, what is the most important professional risk you have taken in your career and why?
Okay, and I want to say these three questions came from Rachel. So trying to respond to those as quickly as we can. I think the biggest professional risk that I ever took was coming to Rio Rancho to start a new school district. And New Mexico had not had a new district in over 30 years, and no one quite knew exactly what that would entail. And so when I got here, there was one desk, there was a file cabinet that didn't work, we had a borrowed computer and a borrowed printer. And when I walked in the door, there were two wonderful gentlemen there and Emma Dreyer. The two gentlemen had been superintendents in the past in the state. And I kind of thought, I wonder what I have got myself into. But when I got out in the schools and I started meeting the people and the staff and the community, I thought this is going to be fine. It's going to be fine. But it was kind of a scary thing. Our first request for money was written on a paper towel by the board president and faxed up on a fax machine. Then all she put on it was send money. So it was quite an interesting start. We have a large district office now. We started with 25 people total in the district administrative team. And it was a risk, but it was a great risk. And I'm so glad that had a great team to be able to get the district started. And we are now 27 years. So we've done very well over that time. Okay.
Okay, and our next question, which is very relevant currently, describe a few challenges you have faced during the public health pandemic.
I think the two that were the most difficult for me, and I don't speak for anyone else, I think it was just the constant change. It changed every week. It changed every month. Sometimes it felt like it was changing every hour. And so because of that, just nonstop chaotic kind of change, it was hard to get a reference point. And we were all brand new again. I mean, none of us had been through anything like this. And so trying to get some consistency and pull things together when things were changing so often was very hard. And it just wore on you after a while. There was just nothing that was the same. The second part of that, I think, would have been looking at what instructional model would work. We thought maybe we were a little better prepared than we were. We were a future ready district. We thought, and we kind of had that technology piece all pulled together, and we found there was a lot we didn't know. And so we had to kind of experiment at the elementary and the secondary level. Janice Chanel then began to talk with all the folks at the elementary level. How can we keep all of the kids K-3 in school every 4 days a week? How could we do that? Because they're so concerned about the loss of instructional time. Renee Salcedo in the secondary was working with the secondary principals. How do we deliver instruction? It looks so different at the secondary level. And it took us 2 or 3 adjustments before we found what we thought would really work. So again, we were all first-year teachers again, so to speak. Everything was new, everything was different, and trying to find a way to be able to deliver instruction was very challenging. And we had to make a lot of modifications and changes as we went.
So with your long career as an educator, Dr. Cleveland, what one thing makes you most proud of during your career?
There's just not one. I can't pick one. It's just, that's too hard. But I think the one thing that I guess I would say I'm most proud of and will take some credit for is having pulled together the most phenomenal team. And you know, leadership is that it's a team effort, not an individual effort. And so we've had some different teams over the years. People have come and people have gone, but we've been able to maintain a really quality group of people in our district. And if you have good people, you know, you can do anything. And sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes it's pretty hard. And I know, you know, our principals here would say the same thing. If they've got a great team in their schools, they can do just about anything. So I really want to emphasize that leadership's a team sport. It's something that you work together on. And we have been able to put together just a phenomenal team. And I brought some of those folks today because I really wanted you to hear from them as well. So that's the one thing. I will give you just a brief example though of one time when that teamwork did pay off for us. And that was in the early part of the district. And that was when we knew it would be 10 or more years before we could build our first high school. We just looked at the numbers. We looked at the bonding capacity and we said, 10 years, a decade, it will take us. And even then it would be a stretch. And yet the city and the county and the community, the school district all came together and found a way. And we opened our first high school in 1997, 3 years after the district was created. That could never have been done without really good, solid teamwork. And everybody pitched in and everybody made it work. And we look back even now and think, you know, how did we really do that? Like to be able to rebuild some of that kind of thinking and momentum again. But it's the team. The team is what I'm most proud of.
For our next question, we'll move on to Suzanne Nguyen, our Executive Director for our Federal Programs Department. So Suzanne, if you were going to talk to a college student right now, what advice would you give to them that you wish you had known when you were in college?
Thank you, Melissa. Hi, everybody. The biggest piece of advice I would give to you, and I wish I had when I was a college student, is the importance of relationships. So with that, I mean with additional peers of yours, even outside of the program of study that you're engaged in, as well as your professors, to not lose sight that we're all humans, and with that, we're social beings, and our college years are such important years of our life in our trajectory of human development. And it really helps to shape who you are and influence your mindset. And so don't don't go into college and have your college experience be just about the content or program that you're engaged in, but really take the opportunity to get to know everybody around you and build those relationships.
Yeah, next we have Julie Arnold. Julie is the principal for our Rio Rancho Cyber Academy. And Julie's question is, what are some ways leaders can find support from other leaders throughout the school district or other leaders in different professional organizations?
Thank you, Melissa. Hi, everybody. Rachel, it is so good to see you all grown up and doing great things. Dr. Cleveland kind of hit the nail on the head when she said leadership is a team effort. And then Suzanne referred to it also by building relationships. Making connections is going to be one of the biggest things that you ever do in your career. And the connections that I've had the opportunity to make through Rio Rancho Public Schools has helped me grow as a leader. And I feel like there are organizations out there that you can also be a part of. I'm part of the New Mexico Association of Secondary School Principals, as well as I am on the National Board of Directors for the National Association of Secondary School Principals. And I think that those relationships and that team that I have around me helps me be better at what I do every day. It helps me when I have a question. I feel like I can contact any one of my colleagues that's here today. When I need support that I don't know the answer to, I have a whole network of people that I can connect with. So it is building the relationships and becoming part of something bigger than just who you are. It's becoming part of something that you have resources available to you that'll help you be successful in every facet of your education and your teaching career.
Thank you, Julie. And next we will move on to Scott Affentranger, who's the principal of Cleveland High School. So Rachel, I'm sure you know Scott. Scott's question is there a book you personally found helpful and can recommend on the topic of leadership?
Well, thank you. Good afternoon. Hi, Rachel. Good to see you again. Everyone knows I'm an avid reader, so it's not a surprise that I get this question, but sarcastically, most of my reading is on warning labels. I will tell you that the one book that made a difference for me, and this was really an easy question, and it's this book right here. It's hard to read the title, but it's Leadership and the 1-Minute Manager. I particularly like it because it's one of the few books that talks about situational leadership, and that's what I have always founded my pedagogic creed and my leadership style around situational leadership. It's written by Ken Blanchard in the late 80s. And another great thing about this is you can read it in an hour. And I think it says all the things you need to say and you need to know about leadership. My favorite quote from it, and I'll leave you with this, is simply this. Situational leadership is not something you do to people, but something you do with people. And I really like that, because leaders lead, but sometimes they're just joining arms with the people they're working with and helping them be successful as well. So that's my book.
Fantastic. I do believe Andrew wrote that down just like I did. I saw him scribbling. So next we will move on to Renee Saucedo, and Renee is our secondary school improvement officer. And Renee's question is, what is one major challenge that leaders struggle with in a new role?
One. I couldn't come up with just one. But what I want to tell you is don't be in a rush to make changes. You may feel like you need to prove yourself, but you already have done that at some point because that's why you have the position. Instead of taking that time to make changes, what you need to do is take the time to see how everything is currently running and work on, it's a theme in this, but work on developing relationships. In the process of developing relationships, you may have to find yourself being vulnerable, but it's going to be so worth it. You're going to develop trust and you're going to develop those professional relationships. And as you're doing that, you're going to learn about the huge range of personalities, skills, and opinions of the people that you're working with. And you'll be able to use all of that information when you start thinking about delegating tasks, which, by the way, delegate, delegate, delegate. Don't try to do it all yourself. And don't try to micromanage, because it's going to keep you sane and give you that balance between home life and your work life. Another just little bit of information, somehow like embrace conflict. It's not easy, but conflict is a part of life, and it's going to be a part of your leadership journey. It's going to happen. So think about it before, how you can make it constructive and productive. And lastly, stay humble, because leadership, as Dr. Cleveland and everybody else has said, is a team effort. It's about influence and impact, not about a job title.
Thank you, Renee. And I have a feeling that Sherry will be echoing some of those same comments in her question as well. Next, we'll move on to Mike Chavez. Mike is our Executive Director for our Human Resources Department. So what attribute do you think is most important for a successful leader?
So, you know, they say that great minds think alike. So you're going to hear a little bit of a theme going on here, but I would, you know, I thought about this a lot, and I think that genuine positive relationship building is probably the strongest attribute you can possess as a good, strong leader. And I'll tell you, I think there's two specific areas that I think this helps you cultivate. One is allowing you to collaborate strongly with those that you work with. But the other that's very important too is allowing you to have sometimes, and this kind of goes with what Renee said, having some uncomfortable and sometimes difficult conversations with people, because you're going to have those. There's conflicts going to arise. And if you have a good, strong relationship to start with, you're going to find it much, much easier to be able to talk to somebody about something that comes up that is probably not the most comfortable, or the thing you really wanted to talk about. And by the way, just to, we started, Suzanne said, keep those relationships. She and I went to school together, and we worked together in more than one situation here. So it really does happen a lot, that you will find these relationships repeating themselves over and over.
Thank you, Mike. And our next question is for Jana Chenault. Jana is our Elementary School Improvement Officer. And I have to say, this question is perfect for Jana, because if you need a slogan, she's the one I go to. She's very good. Her question is, how do you lead brainstorming and foster creativity, among others?
Thank you, Melissa. I would invite one of these people here to speak to you, and that's your inspiration. Honestly, you have to, if you've heard this phrase before, the listen, learn, and lead, it really is wrapped into that. You really need to listen more than you talk to your staff. Listen to what their needs are and what they're asking for. Learn as much as you can as a leader. Never stop learning. You always need to stay up to date. You need to know what's going on, what's current. And through your leadership, you need to make sure you're inspiring people. So that means taking the time to find out what's relevant to them and what they need, what the current topics are, sharing that with them so that they're inspired to want to do more and do better. You'll be surprised how many staff members will, when you share something with them, will implement it in their classroom immediately, because you've inspired them to do that. They just need a little nugget. And so you have to be the forefront of that. You can't expect them to come up with all of that while they're teaching, but really listening. You've heard about connections and relationships. Relevancy is really important. Whatever you're doing with your staff, make sure it's relevant, just like with students. If it's not relevant to what they're doing, you're going to lose them. And then make sure everything has intention and purpose behind it. And connect with their heart as humans. Make sure that you're connected with your staff and build that trust. And all of that sounds really easy or buzzwords, but it's hard. And so being very intentional and make work fun. If you can make it fun and laugh with your staff, you're going to get the best out of them, and they'll become very creative. So I think that's the most important. I was trying to come up with a phrase, Melissa, and I just don't have it.
Yeah, in about 10 minutes, she'll probably walk down to my office and she'll have one. So, again, the next question.
Take back that creativity piece, but all right, go ahead.
Next question is for Sherry Carver. Sherry is our Executive Director for Student Services, and it's very much connected to a lot of what Jana just said. But Sherry's question is, how do traits such as empathy and vulnerability play a role in your leadership?
Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk about vulnerability first. And just a short reference. When I first became a principal, I thought that I had to be always in control. I had to be this tough disciplinarian. I had to be the decision maker for my school and the visionary for my school. And I quickly found out that that persona is hard to maintain. And I found out that it's okay for you to show your human element. It's okay to share your struggles with others. And in fact, when you do so, it allows others to join in the conversation. And as everyone has said, it builds a relationship with others. And it helps bring unity to your school and your organization. So my advice to you would be, let yourself be human. Share some personal stories with your teams, and don't be afraid to admit that you don't have all the answers. It'll help you with your sanity. It'll help you with your stress level, and it will make your teams and your school stronger. So empathy, I can't say enough about empathy. I think to be an effective leader, you have to have empathy for the people that you're working with and the people that you're serving. It helps you build connections with the people that you're working with. And you have to be able to put yourself in your students and your parents and your staff's shoes and listen and really feel where they're coming from. You have to feel their hardships, you have to feel their pain, and you have to understand their concerns. So the question becomes, how do we build empathy when we don't have a lot of reference for something? For instance, we don't have a lot of reference, if you don't have a lot of reference for poverty or addiction or struggling one-parent family, divorce, suicide, I think that's the challenge. And for me, it was a challenge because, I was born into a white, middle-class, Christian, straight, two-parent, four-grandparent family. So how do I build empathy and see my students through a different lens, students that come to me in poverty? I think the answer is educating yourself. Reach out to others, and always keep in mind, walk a mile in their shoes before you give them advice. And I just want to say, this question was perfect for me because I've been reading this book by Dr. Brene Brown, and she talks so much about vulnerability and empathy in her book. Highly, highly recommend you to read it. She says vulnerability is like a superpower. And she says empathy is about making a connection with others and not fixing someone. So I highly recommend this book, and I think it would really help you advance in your leadership. Thank you so much for that perfect question.
Thank you, Sherry. Our next question is for Andrew Pierce. Andrew is the principal at Rancho Middle School. And I know we've been talking a lot about what you should do, but Andrew's question is what you shouldn't do. So is there a trait or a situation that leaders should try hard to avoid?
All right, thank you. I appreciate the question. Yeah, rushing into decision-making is a big one. When I moved into leadership and realized just how multifaceted an entire school is, whether it's school-wide decisions, whether you're working with families, kids in situations, discipline, helping through very fragile situations, having all the information you can get is key. Sometimes I know I still work through, like Sherry was saying, coming to a situation with my lens and my skill set and my information, pausing, pumping the brake, and saying, listen, I need to acquire as much information as I can, make sure it's good information. The use of data, in decision making, not, that feels good. No, do we have a reason for making those changes or suggesting possible policy shifts, things of that nature? But I think the biggest thing is to make sure that your decision making is well informed. that because there's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of things that you're going to face in leadership, making sure you talk to the right people, use your resources. And once again, it's back to that relationship building too. Feel that you can ask for information. So I think that's the biggie for me in that is don't rush into things. Make sure that you're using good information and you're consistent. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Our next question is for Christine Prescott. She's our principal up at Vista Grande Elementary School. So go Grizzlies. How do you keep your team motivated in times of adversity, such as during the public health pandemic?
Thank you, Melissa. Hi, everybody. I was going to echo, I had written down a lot of the same things that you guys all said. So, but the main thing, a couple of things that I really took away from the question, and this is every day with the adversity and on a pandemic on top of that, it's really been insane for our educators, and they're so strong and we're so proud of them, is they need to see our human side too. I'm a mom. I have 2 kids that are going through the pandemic in a school too, and my community here, school staff and our families, they know it. They know that as a parent, I'm experiencing the same thing, quarantining, I'm experiencing remote learning, in-person learning, all of the safety things. So they hear from me as a mom, as a family member, as a sister, as a leader, and as a teacher. That's huge. And the same thing to motivate the people that I work with every day is they see us as leaders doing the same thing that they're doing, serving in the cafeteria, taking out the trash, substituting in the classrooms who are down people. They see us being with children who really need us, who have experienced a lot of trauma. They see us in it with them every single day. So to keep them motivated, we're right by their sides all the time, no matter what. And that really has seemed to help with our community here, that they know that we're in it, that we're all working together. And it sounds cliche that we're all working together on it, but it's true. So that is the best piece of advice that I can give for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. And then to close us out, we will close out with another question for Dr. Cleveland. So you've obviously been with the district since it was started. How do you keep generating new ideas for the district?
Well, I'll share a couple of things, but again, given our conversation, it's not how I keep generating new ideas. It's how we as a team generate new ideas. And I give you, there's some things that I think facilitate that. I do believe, as Julie Arnold talked about, professional organizations are very important. Attending conferences, hearing what's the new research is telling us about teaching and learning. What is the research telling us about what are the best practices in schools? And what should we be looking to do to maximize learning and engage our students in the learning process? So, I do attend some conferences. I will have to tell you, though, kind of the joke that sometimes is around in our department is don't let her go to anymore. Because then I come back and I've got all these ideas. And what I normally find, number one, is that they're already 10 steps ahead of me. I mean, they already know those things. They're already aware those things are changing and they're already moving forward. So that always makes me feel pretty good. It makes me feel a little behind sometimes in terms of the new ideas, but they generally are ahead of me in that. But professional organizations and conferences are important. They help us learn what other people are doing, see what other people are doing. And one of the things that I think is a strength in New Mexico is that we learn from each other. Our school districts we are really willing to share anything with one another, and we do. And so during the pandemic, I would borrow things from Las Cruces, and Farmington would I'd borrow Jana's model for elementary. They thought that was the best they had seen. We share. And in some states, and I've worked in a couple of others, people were much more proprietary, holding things close. They saw it as a competition against other districts. And we don't really function that way in our state. And I think that's a positive. Right now, we're looking at moving ahead in career technical education And we have been in conversation a lot with the Hobbs district. They're about a year ahead of us in getting a career technical education center constructed. And so we've had an opportunity to learn from them. And they have just literally, they've said, anything we have, you can have. And we have done the same with other districts. So we have a wonderful early childhood center. We've had several districts ask us, could we see your plans? Could we see your educational specifications for it? And we share those things. So I think that's one of our greatest strengths. And then, we hear, and several people have already mentioned that, some of the best suggestions come from people in the field, people on the front lines, people in the trenches. And so we have several mechanisms for getting that information back. Jan and Renee meet with principals and get input back from them. I have a superintendent's advisory council. We've had some really good ideas that have come out from the people in the council. So it's not one person generating ideas. It's a multitude of different sources that you go to for getting new ideas. I think the key, and sometimes we do that well and sometimes we don't, is how do we facilitate that conversation to make sure we can hear those voices from the various different components in our district. And I think that's one of the things that we strive very hard to do. And I could go through each one of the individuals that are on the screen and can tell you times when they have done just that, where they've gotten really good information and come back and said, we need to rethink what we're doing. This isn't working very well. And people, that we've talked to are saying this is not working as well as we had hoped. So keeping those lines of communication open, I think are absolutely critical, and making sure that you can get those sources. And then I would close by saying we're not as involved in that as we used to be, but we were a quality New Mexico district. And many of those important things that we learned still are part of our district. It talks about the importance of listening stations, but having something built into your organization where you can hear those voices. And organizations that don't hear those voices are dead organizations. So that's really, I hope I've answered your questions. And I know you asked if we could do about 30 minutes. And so we're right on that. And if we would leave 15 minutes for you all to maybe ask some questions of us. And so Rachel, I'll turn it back to you. And if there are questions that you would like, or any of the other people who are on today, and again, thank you all. We would love to see your faces. So if you want to turn your cameras on, if you do have any questions, we will sure try our best to answer them.
Okay, group, let's answer questions. Let's ask them questions. Just to mention, the people that are presented here with us today are basically the ones who keep the district going. Like, we have Dr. Cleveland, who's the superintendent. We have Jana, who's the elementary secretary, some elementary something, who is
Field improvement officer, yeah.
Who oversees the elementary teachers, principals. And then we have Miss Salcedo, who oversees the secondary. And we have some principals, and then we have Suzanne, who's the native some federal programs director, who are, it's kind of like a president's cabinet. So imagine Dr. Cleveland, the president, and all these are her part of her cabinet members. That's how, but in a school setting, basically they're all her members who have staff below her who literally run the whole school district each and every day in a pandemic. So members, I'm opening any questions. If you have any questions for any one of the panelists today.
Feel free to put them in the chat if you don't want to do it on camera. We can respond to the chat as well.
I have a simple question, but it probably will make all of you really think. Did everyone have this job that they have in mind when they started working for this, or is it something they grew into because of circumstance?
I'll start, and then I hope the rest of you will jump in. When I started, and as you said, I've been here a long time. When I started, I didn't have any idea at all this is where I would be. In most places, I was the first woman to be an administrator in a school district. And so that just kind of evolved over time. But it took me a while to even think about women in administrative roles. And that's just not the way it was when I first started in education. So I think I've grown as times have grown. And when I came back to New Mexico, which is my home state, when I came back, I left a state where there were 90 superintendents. And I was one of the 3 women superintendents. We all went in at the same time. And so we were all pretty good friends, you know, but we were 3 out of 90. And when I came back to New Mexico, there were 2 women in addition to me, someone in Hatch and someone in Tier C were the only 2 women in administration as the school superintendent out of our 89. And today we have 30% of the superintendents in New Mexico who are women. So it's changed a lot over time in terms of that issue. But it is definitely, I did not think when I started I would be in this role at all. All right, how about some of the rest of you? Come on.
I'll go ahead and go
Yeah.
next on that. So this was not my original plan for a career path. I originally wanted to be a pediatrician, and it was actually one of my high school teachers who saw the educator piece in me and nominated me for a scholarship that I got without even knowing it. And then that made me really reflect on a career path for myself. So it was still with children, and I love it, and I can't imagine doing anything else. And then in my particular position, again, not something that I was necessarily going for, but the opportunity arose. And I honestly didn't think about applying until near the end of the posting window. And I thought, why would I not try? Just put it out there and give myself this opportunity to grow and expand my knowledge and experience. So I think that goes back to our previous conversation about just being really open to relationships, and with that you learn more about yourself and what else is out there, and to know that life doesn't always go as you plan, and that's a good thing. Sometimes you just go the way life takes you, and you learn so much from every opportunity that comes in front of you.
I'll piggyback off of Suzanne, exactly what she said. I'm assuming most people go into education because they love working with kids. That's typically why you go into it. And then you realize one day it's a lot harder than you thought it was going to be. You know, you think it's just going to be fun and you're going to be hanging out with kids. And then you realize there's so much more invested. And for me, it was gradually wanting to make a larger impact. So it starts with your classroom, and then you realize I really cared about students who were in the SAT process. So I wanted to be a SAT chair. And then from there, I wanted to get more involved with special education. But every opportunity I took was because somebody nudged me that way, not necessarily because I was seeking it. So I think if somebody sees something in you, whether the timing's right or not, or you didn't see that for yourself, you need to take that opportunity, like Suzanne said, because people will see things in you that you may not see in yourself. And you have to listen when that comes your way, because you'll end up in places you didn't plan to go. If you stay where you think you're going to go, or if you think that's going to happen, it's not. So it is embracing those unknowns and trusting that people see things in you that you may not see in yourself.
And I would just add to that, as a leader, make sure and give that nudge to other people. I'm where I'm at because I was having a conversation with Scott Affentranger one day as a teacher, and he was my principal. And he said, have you ever thought about? Well, I had thought about it, but I didn't really have the confidence in myself to do that. So as a leader, make sure and have those conversations with the people that you're working with. It'll make a difference in their life.
You know, I would add one other thing to that both building on what both Jan and Renee have said, and that's the importance of mentors and people who see things in you and encourage you, and to, as Renee says, pass that on and build on that. But you just cannot underestimate the power of mentors, of people I think that we've all had in our lives who did see something positive in us, or who gave us that little nudge even when it wasn't very comfortable, to try something that maybe we hadn't thought of before. And so I think, mentors are such an important part of, you can be on the mentoring end, or you can be a mentor for others, but both ways, it's a really positive force for good. Are there any other
so
questions?
much, everybody. I mean, this is such a key because as students, there are so many students that they're kind of like undecided on what they want to do. They think the path is flat out. I'm going for that end goal and that's it. But it literally changes as you learn new things. So you guys are just like reinforcing the fact that when people see something in you, they speak up. And people see these things and they let you know that you have a strength that you didn't realize you had. For me, that was Dr. Sandy Wilson. She's their advisor. And so I just thank you all for taking that opportunity to explain something so simple, but very powerful.
Same, like going back on that, it's like with what Faith was saying, like, when I left high school, I thought I was going to be into theater. I was going into all this stuff. And like the second semester of my freshman year, that all changed. It was in psychology, human services, sociology, and now I'm like wanting to go into the counselor field, like from theater to becoming a counselor and wanting to now even maybe a trio, because I'm a trio student, maybe a trio advisor. It's just like, it's crazy where life could take you. It's just like, and some, as well as somehow having leadership in it, having leadership play a role in it as well. Any other members? You guys have questions for the group? That is all. I want to thank you all for taking the time out of your guys' busy day, and it's Friday, and spending 40 minutes with us this afternoon, spending time with the Phi Beta Kappa region.